Hello, welcome everyone to the 2020 Brooklyn Antiquarian Book Fair virtual edition. Welcome back to those who have been following our presentations over the last 3 days. Today is Sunday, and this is the keynote and the final speaker that we have for the fair. If you haven't already gone and checked out the virtual booths, there are 225 of them with over 3,000 unique items for sale. So go over to brooklynbookfair.com and follow the link that says "Take me to the fair." Tomorrow, Monday, the 14th, there will actually be 600 additional items added just for that day. So make sure if you've already visited the fair and done your shopping to come back and see these new and unique items. For this last speaker, I just wanted to say a few words of introduction. He is one of my very favorite people in the world, and I felt very honored to make a short documentary about his life and artwork last year. He is an eccentric and funny and very interesting person, and his work sort of coheres with his personality in that, you know, you go into the studio and he's cracking jokes and stepping over things and you don't know where all this is going. And out of all of that madness, you end up finding an artwork and a person that is deeply spiritual and humane. And I think that reminds me a lot of the subjects that he covers as well. So again, I'm very honored, very proud to have Howard Lerner here to do our final presentation on Sideshow banners. And without further ado, take it away, Howard.
Thanks, Brian, for your intro. I picked up on one word you just said, humane. And when you're talking about circus sideshow folks, the freaks, that is the big question about how to be with them in the world when we feel so different from them. But hopefully the banners themselves will bring this all together. So for further ado, is that the right word? Further ado, let's see the first image and then we can start. And welcome to everybody. Thanks for coming. The first image that I'm showing you, go back one, please. Go back. His name is Dickie, and he was the penguin boy. There are thousands of sideshow banners around. And why did I pick this one? I moved to New York in 1982 from Tallahassee, Florida, and there was such a shock of culture difference between laid back Tallahassee, Southern, to New York, where it seemed as though everybody was trying to outdo themselves to be seen, to be heard. And when I was walking along the streets in Soho, which used to be where the art galleries were, I came across a poster shop and postcards, and I loved going in those kind of places. And I saw this one, Dickie, and the other one, which is Half Lady, but we'll stay with Dickie for now. I don't know his physical anomaly, what was different about him. You could see the bottom where his feet are conjoined at some place. Not a medical expert. But what I found the most interesting about this image was not only him, but I call them the gawkers. The gawkers were these people who gawked. They were in awe, but at the same time, they were kind of, I don't know, somehow they were making fun of him in some way. And it kind of really put a strong feeling of tension between the main subject and the gawkers. And there was something about it that really turned me into becoming a sideshow banner freak. The man who had these printed up or postcards, his name was Randall Levinson, and I really wanted to see one of these. So I called him up on the phone, and I found out that he lived in New York. And we can go to the number 2 image now so we can see what that, the number 2 image is Half Girl. She's in the upper left-hand corner of your page. And she was also the postcard lady that I had seen. And it was just an awe-filling experience to seeing these people who had such physical anomalies. They were disabled in some way, and they have this kind of, some of them have cheerful expressions, some of them have kind of blank expressions. The one on the bottom I didn't see in the postcard show, but she's very attractive. And there was a lot of changes made by the Sideshow banner. I'm not going to say artists yet, because we haven't talked about that. A Sideshow banner advertisement sign makers. And so I'm going to go to the one on the right, which is a photograph of one of these ladies. And you just can imagine she did not have legs. She had hardly a torso. And you kind of try to figure out how she could survive. And, but she did. And the next really big question is, are we doing something wrong for looking at these people? Especially if we went to the Sideshow in the mid 1920s, 30s, 40s, where it was big time. And now they're basically, you know, you can get in big trouble if you started one of these things up down your neighborhood. There's a whole culture shift. And I don't know if it's for the better, because I've read extensively on this. Most of the freaks, believe it or not, would rather be out with people, the regular people, everyday people, as a artist, as a show person, than being stuck in an institution. So that's kind of a big question that I'd really like to hear from you today, the audience, what you feel about this, because this is really the crux of some of the matter that I like to talk about. Okay, we can go to the next. Okay, he wasn't the barker, he was the talker. And he would say, you know these terms, step right up. And what he did, he's behind him, if you can see in the left-hand corner, there is a Sideshow banner. Of course, all these are done in black and white, these photographs. But he was the man that brought people in. And then the banners themselves would suck you in too, because they're full color, very big, very showy. And let's see another image to talk about that. Okay, we're switching here. This has something to do with the sideshows. It's one of my recent pieces. I'm a collage artist, and I use images from the Sideshow and circus and shadow puppets and whatnot. And the one I wanted to bring up is the guy on the right. He's got an arm like an accordion. That's another one of my images, accordion. So I wanted to throw it in. But he's the magician and he's blind. So he definitely fits in the category as a sideshow artist. I don't know if there were really any blind magicians in the troupe. I kind of work with the different people as a mix and match and change things around. So it's not really a sideshow banner I'm painting. I'm doing my own thing, and I'm using the imagery soaked into me after the last how many years that I've been involved with the banners. Next. Next, yeah. Okay, this one is one of my favorite images. It's not a sideshow banner. It's called a fake freak. I call them fake freaks. And what it is that someone like P.T. Barnum, who actually had this made, it's a mermaid. Well, not really. They took the bottom part of a fish and sewed it together with the top part of a monkey or other kind of primate and created a mermaid lady. And so what can you say about this? It's somewhat grotesque, but I find these really quite interesting to look at. What is it about human / animal that makes the sideshow people are attuned to that combination of people and animals and how they mix together. Of course, we know from mythology, for one example, of the centaur, the horse human. And so this has been around for more than 50, 60 years. This has been around for thousands of years, man and animal combined. The other three, the bottom right photo is a lady, they called her Serpentina. Her affliction was that her legs were, her legs, the bones in her legs were all soft. There was no structure except they could twist her around and get her on a stage set. They also would do this, and you can't really see it from the photograph, but they would tattoo snake scale skins to make her look more snake-like. The one that I love both of those Sideshow banners. The one on the top right, I've never seen before I started doing this presentation. And I'm really quite amazed by the way the artist twisted the body around into making it a beautiful curly shape. And the lady on the bottom left, she's different. She's really not the snake lady. She's not Serpentina. She's a mermaid. And it was pretty easy to make her into a mermaid by finding a suit that could cover the bottom half of her body with fish-like texture and fins at the end. Let's go to the next one. This guy, his name is George Williams, and I've been tracking him down for years, and I am somehow immersed in him right now. In my most recent piece, which is not finished, he's there. He's kind of the MC. He's kind of the talker instead of being the freak. I could not find a banner that talked about George Williams. I just know from his persona there was something very powerful about him. As you can see, he was a Sideshow character for a pretty long time of his life. As you see, the first one, he was maybe 2, 3 years old, and the last one on the right, he was an old man. Why do I find him interesting? I think I think he overcomes his disability. Somehow, in some way, he is stronger than that. And that really is a powerful statement to make. And they called him the Turtle Boy, but I rarely reference him in that way because to me, he wasn't the Turtle Boy. Okay, you want to go on to the next one? In this group here, the first image on the left is a magician, as you can tell by the magician taking the rabbit out of the top hat. For you people who like to know other language, Pasha, I think, is an Indian word, or it could be a Turkish word, but it means master. So he was a master of magic. I put that Sideshow banner to the left of the image on the right, which is not a Sideshow banner. It's an antique toy automaton, which could get wound up, and the magician, the small little guy there on the right, would do what's called a shell game. He would hide the shell underneath the cone shapes and move them around until you didn't know where the shell was. Very interesting, and I've looked at these online. There's a whole bunch of them on YouTube if you go and check. But why I also brought these two guys together, because they have similar imagery, similar hats, similar professions. But what's make the one on the right is a lot stronger visually for me, because the one on the left is too cluttered. There's so much going on in there that you really rarely focus on what's happening. Now it has faded. These banners are old, so some of the color is taken out, but I think a lot of it could have been done better. And anytime you look at an image of any artwork or whatever, be critical, because just because it's up on a screen or on a museum wall doesn't mean it's good or very, very strong image-wise. Okay, let's go to the next. We're in the same subject matter. Top left, I find is a stronger, I hope you can see it because it's a very small image up here on the four images on the one screen. I think this was done by a guy named Fred Johnson. And as you can see, there's similar imagery, similar things happening, something flowing out of the vase, all that kind of stuff, or a hat, but it's clearer. And especially when you're dealing with subject matter like this, where things are not ordinary, you want to make them clear so the ordinariness comes out and the more spiritual aspect of the piece also comes out. The one in the middle, a guy named the Jack Wilder magician, and the guy named Brush, the master mystic, I really strongly dislike this type of imagery. One, because I think of it as mere and sheer, just plain old illustration. And I think the whole strength of the pieces get sucked in by the virtuosity of the way they did them. And I don't mean virtuosity in a good way. I think of it as virtuosity in taking away from the actual image. The bottom left, a reason I left that in there because it has some of the magic top hat in there, but I also collect old 78 record album covers because I use them primarily for my collage work. I don't own this one, so I didn't cut it up. So I hope somebody gets it and doesn't cut it up. Okay, we can go on to the next one. Finally, we're going to talk about one of the artists. His name was Fred Johnson. And over the years, in looking at various artists, Sideshow banner artist, he was the one that came out and he was the star. And I don't think anybody really touches close to his virtuosity. There are a couple of stories that I've heard recently about him. One is that his granddaughter, who they interviewed, told me that he didn't consider himself an artist in the least. He started work on these when he was about 16 years old or so, and they asked him to do signs. And I guess they wanted him to do signs with the picture of the person doing whatever for the sideshow. So he added the image to it. How he learned how to draw, how to create imagery, color, light and dark shapes, composition, all the stuff that goes into making a work of art are there. Even though he doesn't consider himself an artist, he truly was a master. And the one on the bottom is one of his. It's from one of my favorite books of all times. It's called Freaks, Geeks, and Strange Girls. Now, how can you resist a title like that? Of course, we know what the freaks are about. There's different kinds of freaks. We've touched upon some of them, maybe not, but let me touch upon some. One is actual people who had physical anomalies, birth defects, etc., or certain types of diseases. For example, ones that had their skin become very crackly. They called them alligator people. The geeks were just freaky type of people. They didn't have any physical anomalies, but they would do weird things to get the attention of the viewer. For example, one thing they always did is they could take a live chicken and they would literally bite its head off. Can't get any stranger than that. But then there's the strange girls, which I'll talk more about that down the road. So, I do want you to see one thing about these two images. The lady with the snakes and the lady with the scarf are pretty much the same lady. And if you look closer, the scarves that are entwining her body are pretty much the image of the snake. So he had his shtick down pretty good, and he reused imagery to his advantage. Okay, let's move on. This artist, his name was Snap Wyatt, and I've liked many of his images over the years. The photograph on the top, I just recently found a way that he worked, and I thought maybe other sideshow banner artists worked too, is he took mannequins, store mannequins, and he would dress them up into the various characters that you would see in the sideshow banners. As you can notice, the lady juggler on the bottom, she's got like a shiny-ish body because the mannequins had that sheen, that slight shiny thing happening there. So I think he picked up on that maybe a little too much. And again, we're talking about, and I don't mean to be the art professor, which I'm not, but I do look at things differently in the sense that I want everything to be as strong visually as possible. The lady juggler is fine, but I think it should have been a vertical banner because she gets kind of squished and you don't really get to see the things that she's juggling as well. And that background with the red and the orange, it could have been stronger and not as chintzy looking. Sorry, Snap. I hope you're not watching this if you're still around. Anyway, there's one other part. It's called alive, the big circle on the bottom. Alive means these are real people, and you'll see them behind the stage. There were other sideshow banners that didn't say alive, and I'll show you those down the road here. Let's go down to the next one. Okay, this is the famed Johnny Eck. Now, Johnny Eck was one of the main characters in the movie Freaks, which if you get into this subject, it's like a must movie. It's from the 1930s, and the movie itself was called Freaks. It has a story to it, but the main story has to do with seeing the freaks in their habitat within a sideshow. And you get to see Johnny, and he's a pretty amazing character as he did all sorts of acrobatic feats with just his hands and his torso. He's pretty much similar to the lady we saw before. He's a half boy or half man. Why the word turkey boy? I think it's because he was Turkish. It had nothing to do with that he looked like a turkey. You may connect the fez, this hat on his head, as like the turkey's gobbler thingamajig on his mouth there. But again, he's live, and I love this banner. It's like very dynamic. I love the use of the ladder and how he is front and center like a big giant A shape. Anyway, good work, Fred. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's move on. This one is, I think, a very strong image. If you can see from what's happening, it's an X-ray machine, literally an X-ray machine. And the whole thing behind this sideshow act was that you could see through the woman's body to see the X-ray of her bones. Now, the question is, how long did she do that? The answer is a lot of these people got cancer. A lot of these people got radiation burns, and etc. So as much as I find the image being very powerful, it's very sad to see sometimes what happens when people feel that they're safe. As we all know, we're not anymore. But these people did it for the sheer wanting to make a living and the sheer wanting to create attention. Okay, let's move on. The one on the left here we got two images similar. Brenda is a girl. Beatty, I don't know if that's supposed to be a guy's name or her last name, but there's something, as you can see, excuse me, something that you could see that's a little bit different about Brenda, and is that she has a beard. So this was a lot of who and how back when. I don't know how much that would be around now. I don't want to get into socio-political things, but I mean, it does have to deal with transgender ideas, even back in the, let's say this was done in the 1940s. So we're dealing with that in this Sideshow banner. And the people in the background, here we go again with the gawkers. They don't know what to think. So they're walking there in the Turkish bath, getting unclothed, getting clothed, seeing her half body. So it creates a whole sense of excitement. You want to go in and see this lady. The one on the right is an actual person. Her name was Priscilla, and her stage name was Priscilla, excuse me, the monkey girl. And she was an actual person. And found out down the road that my pal, Randall Levinson, that showed me the circus Sideshow banners, wrote a book entitled something with the, In Search of the Monkey Girl. How come I didn't think of that before? In Search of the Monkey Girl. And there she is. And she's really in a similar pose to the banner. And I don't think that there is any reason to think that they're the same person, but there's a little side note to this, because I just saw this about a month or two ago from one of the other people that are in the book show. The guy's name, his name is Will Baker, and he had a handwritten letter written by Priscilla, and she wrote something that was very poignant about her life and about her image being connected with the book. And she said she wished she had never done that. And I was wondering if that also meant if she wished she hadn't ever kind of portrayed herself in this way, and if that all was coming back to her toward the end of her life. Don't know, I read into it a lot, but it's food for thought. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, hold on a second. So what does that has to do with circus Sideshow banners? Well, we do know that these guys and their woodies, their dummies, were around pretty much since the late or early 19th century till now. I guess some of these guys or ladies now are ventriloquists. They're on shows, America's Got Talent. So they've been around a long time, and things have changed over the years. But one thing that doesn't change is, I think little boys and girls find these dummies fascinating, especially the guy on the right. I mean, that guy is pretty horrendous looking. I'm not talking about the guy on the left. I'm talking about his dummy is pretty spooky. The guy on the left, he's a little sweet looking, but he's more of a, I guess, a little more of a clown imagery. And if we can switch to a full screen, I can show you this guy right here. My dad made me this ventriloquist puppet. I don't have his whole body and his mouth is not working, but we can try a little bit. Hi, my name is Woody, and I'm talking to you folks out there in TV land. And I don't understand why you put me in a circus sideshow, because I'm a real person and I have real feelings. And let's hold on a second here. And I have eyes that move back and forth. And thanks, Dad. I've still kept this dummy for 56 years. And I'm not talking about my brother. This was a real dummy. Okay, let's move back to the regular shot, please. Okay, So why do I have to do brother jokes? I don't know. It's when I'm still 10 years old sometimes. All right, let's move on to the next one. No, going the other way. Keep going. Yep, there we go. So I did search and research and finally found an image of a ventriloquist sideshow banner. It was in black and white, and it's these two little puppets, ventriloquist puppets on the ventriloquist's lap. And if you can't see it too well, it's being hung up on some sort of rope. I didn't mention anything about all the technical aspects of a banner, and they had little grommets in the sides of each corner with rings, and they would take the rope and put them through the rings and then hang them up like big, large tents, and they would be awesome looking in any sideshow place of walking. The other two, the image on the right, they're selling these little dummy guys for very little money because it was back in the 1920s or 30s when nobody had any money to buy these. But it's sort of, to me, would reminisce of going on Amazon. This was their Amazon back then, where they'd see all these images and things that they wanted to buy. Anyway, we can move on. Okay, here we go with something I mentioned before. In the top image, of course, it says two-headed baby. And the bottom, it says $500 guaranteed real. So can you guess what it doesn't say? It doesn't say live, because it would have a circle, and underneath, inside the circle would say live. So what do you get for a two-headed baby to see? The terminology is kind of crude. I guess this whole subject is kind of politically incorrect, but what they call these little fetuses, they call them pickled punks. And you would see a two-headed baby, but they were not alive. And the bottom left, you actually see a living two-headed baby. And on the right, not the same two, but two young kids. They're kind of even more than the Siamese twins because they're sharing one body, and they have two heads, one on each side. It must have been some horrific life, maybe not all the time, but a lot of the time. I'm curious about this nurse who's kind of smiling like, here, see what I see. I don't know, I always get creeped out, not so much by the freaks, but by the people's attitudes of looking at them. And I guess I'm one of them too. I did want to bring up, when I first saw those Randall Levinson sideshow banners, something kicked in me. I have to go to the library. I was at the time in New York and still am. I went to NYU Medical Library, and I started looking through the medical texts on physical anomalies. I tell you, it scared the S out of me seeing these. And a lot of these books were in German. So just reading German words along with these images, and I kind of was like, it was titillating, but at the same time, it was fairly scary. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is a different type of physical anomaly. It was a genetic defect. The name of this type of anomaly was hirsute. And I'm not sure about the spelling, but I think it's H-I-R-S-U-I-T-E-S, hirsutes. Their affliction, or if you don't want to call it that, was they had hair growing for the entire full-skinned part of their bodies, including, as you can see, on the face. Instead, no eyes were covered with hair, no nose, bottom of the nose, or no mouth. But one of the guys was called Jojo the dog-faced boy. This might be the one you see on the bottom left when he became older. I just found the image on the right when I was investigating for doing this talk. And I'm kind of curious, it's so Elizabethan. Yeah, and somehow the way it's portrayed in this very, 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 very traditional. Thank you. Very traditional method of painting, which you usually don't see when you're looking at sideshow people. But in this piece, you see it and you have a different reaction. Even the hair is softer and not as scraggly. Okay, let's move on. This one here, I've seen the image on the banner guy or the two-faced man a bunch of times. And I think they were portrayed by various people at various times. So I picked the guy on the right. So that's another type of freak. People who make themselves up like the snake, the Serpentina lady who they had tattoos on her body, the bottom half of her body. But this guy decided to have a tattoo of a head. Maybe it looks like his on the other side. I never saw the other side of his head. But I think it's pretty clever. Not as interesting as an actual physical freak, but it kind of has an interesting mixture with his own hair as the mustache. And anyway, I wanted to show you that one too. Okay, we can move on. Otis was similar to some of the other freaks that I showed you. He had physical anomalies to his torso, his arms, his hands, his feet were all stunted in some way. But as have we seen, excuse me, as we've seen in the past, the mixture of human and animal components would work into the whole image, the circus sideshow image, which we see on the right. What I find the most incredible about this one is he animates the figure. It's not a guy just on a stage looking straight out at you. It's a guy with the imagery of a frog going to catch a fly. I know it might seem, I don't know, as I said before, very incorrect. Maybe not just politically incorrect, but human incorrect. But these were done, and for some reason I find them fascinating, and I'm glad you folks came to bear witness. I also think of Otis as a kind soul. Something about his face is quite unbelievable. Okay, let's move on. This guy's name was Samuel Parks. I was able to get his full name. They also called him Hop the Frog Boy. And they did a different thing with him. They gave him more caricature, more comic book kind of imagery. And I found it interesting. The background is not, maybe it's a jungle shape back there, but curious about the eyes. They're very pop-eyed. And I'm looking at the photograph on the left of Hop, and there's something about his eyes that also connote a type of disease that has to do with eyes coming out strongly in a human's face. I don't know the anomaly. I don't know the disease. But you'll see a similar portrait banner on the bottom right, the black and white banner on the right of Hop there. And what I find of interest, again, is the people that are not the banners, the people. And this guy has a totally different response. He could have been one of the talkers during a break, but it looks to me like he's very bored with being there. And I found that interesting as well. Okay, we can move on. Wow. I love this young lady. I don't know when she's from. I think she's a little older than me now, not that much, but she was a tattooed lady at Coney Island. And if you can see on the left image, there's a picture of George Washington. And he's like right between her breasts, upper part of her breasts. And I've seen images of a similar lady, maybe it's her, when she was maybe in her 80s. And I wish I had shown the image, but George Washington takes on a whole different approach. He actually almost begins to smile. So I wanted to throw that out at you. And I did my own version of her, a tattooed lady. She has more like a ballerina clothes on. And I just really picked up on this the other day when I was going through the Sideshow show here, that the volcano is kind of connotes the flapper design of her feathered headdress. So maybe I was picking up on that headdress that I had seen for years, and it became the volcano. Don't know, but maybe it did. Okay, move on. Okay, moving on to the turtle gal. Turtle gal. First, I find the image of the turtle gal, just the word gal. It's not a term we use today anymore. The other thing about turtle gal is you will see her in a portrait of her, excuse me, an actual photograph of her down the road, the next group, but I'm going to talk about these first. Again, there's $1,000 reward, I think, if you don't see her alive. So she is an actual person. She's not in a bottle. On the bottom right is just an old Sideshow banner of a very large turtle. And I think it's beautifully painted. That's one reason that I think of a lot of these banners as not being just advertisements, because they're beautifully painted. And the bottom left is something I've just got into and putting into my paintings recently, as shadow puppets. My mom used to do shadow puppets when we used to play the old movies from our house, and she'd put her hands up in different configurations, and then she'd create creatures from that. And in this case, it was a creature of the turtle. Okay, let's move on. Excuse me. This is the turtle girl, the turtle lady. She's nothing like, you don't see any big shell on the back of her back. I think there's a little more drama in seeing her on all fours like that. Disturbing at times to look at. And the other thing that really affected me is that I went down to Coney Island back in the late 80s, 1980s. And there was still the old Coney Island. There was about maybe a couple of Sideshow places left. There, as I might have mentioned before, there aren't any anymore. It's taboo, and it's probably against the law. This wasn't against the law at the time, and I actually saw her. And she was a lot older than these pictures. And I had eye-to-eye contact with her. And there wasn't really a joy or a pride in her. It was a job that she did because it's the only one she could do, as she thought she could do. Her name was Alzora Lewis. And we thank her for being, I think, our last image. That's our last image. But I just have a couple of things I want to show you, so if we can switch to the other screen, I'd appreciate it. Here we go. This is a really interesting book. I just picked it up about 6 months ago. It's called Painters of the Peculiar, and it has tons of information in it by Michael Papa. All the stuff that I left out, which because I didn't know, you will find in this book, and the images of this. It's in color too, but this is some of the book just to show you. It has imagery and lots of stories, and I highly recommend it. And I didn't mention, which I think is an important part of my own work, is here is George Williams. I do drawings of these photographs that I find, and that's one of the drawings I did for the piece that I'm working on now, but it's still in just drawing and some collage stage. If we go to
5 more images, Howard.
What?
5 more images.
Okay, there's 5 more images in the slideshow?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay, but right now we're gonna take a look. Let's take a look. Can you switch me? Okay, thank you. All right. As we go on with a little snafu, the snake turtle lady. I called her the mummified turtle lady. And this was done in the first months of coronavirus. And I was imagine everybody who lives on this planet was scared shitless to be around. And we needed something. And this image came up of the turtle lady becoming a foreteller of the future. And something akin to in old churches, they have something called relics. And in this case, she was a mummified turtle lady in my image of her. And she had a strength, a power to be able to tell us what's going to happen. And I won't go into the technical, but I did use the shadow puppet turtle in the bottom part of the screen. Okay, let's move on to a couple more images. Oh, here we go. Not too much on the sideshow here, but I do like, other than the sideshow banners, other artwork. And excuse me. And the top left are icons, Greek or Russian Orthodox icons of frescoes in a church. What I liked about this one is because it kind of reminded me of some of the bright colors and the strong linear lines aspect of the banners. The lady on the right is an angel, and she's giving the crown to either the Virgin Mary or to God. I don't know, because I didn't have the left side of that fresco. But again, it's very strong, very powerful, and very strong background in that it sets the image up to seeing it close and strongly. Bottom right is the artist who I love, admire. His name was Max Beckmann. He was a German expressionist painter. I would have loved to have seen, he did acrobats, but I would have loved to have seen him done sideshow characters, because I love the way he worked, and I would have loved to have seen how he would have treated these people. Bottom left is just an image I wanted to throw in. It takes actually in London. It's a circus sideshow in London, and it's giant giant rats. I would not pay money to go in and see giant rats. Not if they paid me, I wouldn't go in to see them. Anyway, do we have any more? I think we're getting close to the end. This is Harold. Harold is one of those musical glass makers of sound by rubbing the glass, and has nothing to do with the sideshow characters, except he was one. but he didn't have any anomalies or freakiness about him, except that his eyes kind of freaked out by listening to the music he was creating. Okay. And I think this might be the last. This guy was Franklin Tinney. He came to and lived in my hometown before I was alive. He was with the Sideshow from Sicily. And I didn't really like the banner, but I did like the collection of what he was made of. 3 legs, 4 feet, 16 toes, and they did not mention one thing. He had an additional penis, which I guess back in the 1940s, 50s, when they made this, it would have not been proper. Maybe it's not proper anymore, but I mentioned it to you. And also another magician who, I think all the stuff is there for a good banner, but it gets kind of bogged down in detail, and the color is really so strong it takes away from the imagery. So back to my art critical explanation of things. Okay. And this is about a banner that's about 20 feet long. It's all of the guys and gals you've seen, or some of them that you haven't seen. It's as you can read, it's the Cavalcade of World of Wonders. There are photographs with about 25 people in one of these banners, photographs of them. I don't know, what do we have next? Do you have anything next? Oh, I think this is the last one. This is a painting I did. I played around with the different characters, added some, took away some, and it did this on gouache paper, gouache paint. It's like a watercolor base. I wanted to be with them, so I decided to make an entire circus sideshow in this piece. Okay. And that's that.
All right, Howard, thank you so much for doing this. I'm back with you. We're split screen now. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A. I'll ask some questions following up what you did, as well as seeing what's online. I put my glasses on so I can actually read them. But as I kind of expected, the subject is a little bit of a minefield, and I think our chat room turned into kind of a microcosm of what's going on in social media and the world in general today. Some negative people, some positive people, but we're going to do our best to keep it on the up and up. And thank you for a wonderful presentation. I think some were under the impression that it was just going to be sort of an academic history of sideshow banners, and didn't necessarily understand that this was more of a personal journey between you seeing these and them inspiring you. And so I think that's sort of an unusual approach to art history. Anyway, we don't really get to hear from a lot of artists who integrate things into their work and find things that maybe, an academic like myself, trained art historian, wouldn't necessarily see, because I'm not, actively creating these kind of works. And, in a way, what you do sort of has always reminded me a little bit of like what Tom Waits did with his music, is to, look at this side of life that, mannered people or, dignified society doesn't find beautiful. But I think, it goes one further into the fact that it's not necessarily that, people have the choice to live this kind of subterranean life. And I think the sideshow acts particularly drive that home, that there wasn't any kind of choice in the matter. And yet, they still had to persist and survive. If you could talk a little bit about that.
They had a choice. They could have, as they would do today. There's a couple of things they would do today. One, they would be able to abort the fetus, which really back then in the day, there was none of that, and they had no idea what their child was going to look like, for in case of the pickled, as they call them, pickled punks. And also some of the other ones that grew to old age, like the Franklin Tinney, the 3-legged man. He grew to an old age, and he a lot of these people were almost sold into it, which I didn't mention in my talk. It was almost like sold into slavery, but they got paid. But at the same time, their families used them for a lunch ticket. And that's pretty heavy duty. And they were maybe not really wanting to be there. But
yeah, you mentioned early on this sort of option. I don't know if it was an option, but we do see this sort of two sides of the coin in David Lynch's movie The Elephant Man, where he's both institutionalized and part of the freak shows in 19th century England, and we can see the sort of the problematic side with both of that, in that, you know, the institutional side at first really considers this person almost to be not a person, and more just something to study. And so it's interesting that they can be treated in the same way regardless of the circumstance or the forum.
yeah, I'm really glad they made that movie, because it got to show a circus sideshow person in the light of as being a very educated, kind, someone who had to deal with so much hardship, and just the way he was, the way he looked. But yeah, I'm very,
Yeah.
I don't know the world is pleased, but I'm glad they made that movie.
Brian Fay asks, I noticed most of the pieces you've shown are American. Are freak show banners like these primarily an American form of outsider art, or are there similar kinds of artwork from other countries?
A good question, because I wanted to mention this and I forgot. There's a fantastic website called sideshowworld.com. And on it, you can go to the various links on it. And there are posters, banners, the actual photographs of people walking through the sideshow that, you know, that are different. They're a little bit different. You'll see some of them if you go there.
When you had the Frog Boy slide up, you had the banner up at the top, and below you had an in situ picture of some people looking bored or drinking soda or whatever in front of the banner. And they were slightly different of composition, but the iconography looked the same. And it dawned on me that there was this almost sort of medieval quality where, you know, someone else commented that they don't actually look much like their banner, but the banners, the images of themselves continue from banner to banner, sort of the, you know, the composition of the figure. And I know, so I have a kind of double question in here. I know that you also paint a lot of figures from religious history as well. And so, you know, can you talk a little bit about how the different banners would influence each other?
Yeah, I talked about it briefly with the photo of Fred Johnson with his snake charmer lady, and the bottom picture of a banner with the lady with the scarves flying around. I think they would take certain images and slightly change them to create another banner. I think it wasn't a total, each one was so different. I see it as somewhat, and I don't know if I've ever thought of it, but you brought it up, Ryan, or one of the people had questioned. There's this whole school of like Greek icon painters that you probably could see on YouTube, and they would work from a similar or very close to the one previous, and they were just basically copying, but somehow the copying translation became different, but it wasn't from trying to be different. So whoever picked up on that frog boy, that the banner was a little bit different, I'm glad they brought that up, because it really shows this type of work, the icon thing and how it gets transformed.
Is there a spiritual quality to the work?
Whose, mine or the banners?
The banners.
Oh. Okay. I do. I think what the most amazing thing about the work is that even though some of the images are difficult, the sideshow banner painter took away the barrier by making them not photorealism, but making them palatable. So you got up close to see what you were looking at, and you would go, wow, I got to go see this. And when they go into the booth to see the actual sideshow freak, either they were appalled or they thought they got gypped, ripped off. But it was always a confrontational thing with either the banner or the actual person on the inside of the tent.
Yesterday we had Michael Horst from Twin Peaks as one of our presentations or one of our interviews and webinars. And I was thinking when I was looking at some of these sideshow banners, the way the presentation is drawn has that theatrical quality. So a lot of them have these hanging red drapes or curtains behind them, which reminds me a little bit of the Red Room in Twin Peaks, or obviously where that came from, which is the theater. And so, you know, I couldn't help but notice there was this aspect of, you know, with curtains, we think of Wizard of Oz, or we think of in Twin Peaks as it being sort of a gateway into this secretive world. And I guess in a way, I'm sort of wondering if that was, you know, this kind of an unconscious way of, you know, capturing something of the otherworldly that exists, you know, with these figures.
I don't know if they thought that. I'm imagining that they wanted to make the freaks look substantial in the sense of these being performers, etc., stage performers, I guess. I don't know what else, or something that you would look at and go, yes, I want to go see that. I use that the same, I call it a framing method, that those drapes, curtains were used to find an image that I could put inside there. It kind of kept it from going out to the edge. And I've used it over the years. Even before that, before I worked with this sideshow. But there's a great artist who did a painting. It's at the Brooklyn Museum. And he used the curtains, but it was a curtain to show a pile of arms and legs and shoes. And his name was Philip Guston. And I love his work. And he used that imagery of the curtain for display, to focus. And I think I've picked up on that over the years.
Yeah. We had a few more comments that I wanted to touch on, basically. One named Kilbuck Norman actually says that one of the late images of the magician is actually his, and it's more contemporary. And,
oh.
Yeah, so we didn't know that, but I think it actually brings up a sort of serendipitous or good point is that, you know, I think what you were trying to say earlier with Fred Johnson and him not labeling himself as an artist is that the artworks or the banners were foremost considered forms of advertisement, or they had a functional purpose. And I wonder, because there is, you know, obviously a new generation that is into this work, not only yourselves, but not only yourself in a private practice, but others that are still doing banners for, and I guess I wonder, you know, did any of them ever get interviewed and think of themselves as artists, any of the originals?
The book I showed you has some interviews. I think one of the artists, Johnny May, was one of the co-writers of the book. So there are written testimonies. I don't know much about specifics, and I want to go back to the man that did the painting of the magician, where I critiqued him. I do not in any way want to say ill of anybody else's work, but when I made this talk up, when I thought about it, I didn't want to just say great, 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 and why is this one great and that one's great. I wanted to say how I felt it could be stronger. I self-criticize myself all the time. And I felt I wanted to be in this talk as an artist coming in and looking at these as an artist, looking at other artists' work.
Yeah. And that's a unique way to look at them. And I'm really appreciative that you took the time to do it. Thank you so much, Howard. Thank you for all the effort that you put into this and for being a part of the fair. And I encourage everybody now to go back to brooklynbookfair.com and enjoy the virtual booths. And also, yeah, here we go. Howard Lerner.
Go to my advertisement, howardlernerart.com.
Do they need to have the quotations?
No. Where's
All right.
quotations? Oh, no little dots. Just howardlernerart.com. And feel free to comment. And now you can comment on my work on my website. I'll take it.
And also, if anybody wants to subscribe to Getman's virtual book and paper fair YouTube channel, hit subscribe below and you'll get notices of future videos that come in. But that's it for programming for the 2020 Brooklyn Antiquarian Book Fair Virtual Edition. Enjoy the rest of the fair. Again, 600 new items go up tomorrow. Thanks to everyone who attended and to everyone who commented, and we'll see you again next year.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye, Howard.
Bye-bye.
Okay.